Hi, everyone. I'm Superfizz on Reddit, Twitter, YouTube. I'm here with Samer, and tonight we want to encourage you to get started with an Ethereum 2 validator. We have a staking guide that Samer has developed based on Ubuntu for the Medalla testnet using the Teku validator client. Right now, there are about 5 validator clients that are making progress toward mainnet launch. Those are Prism, Lighthouse, Teku, Nimbus, and Lodestar. Teku is proven to be one of the very solid clients, so we're looking forward to great things. And Samer has written several really good guides, and they've caught my attention. And I've actually said to him online, like, I tried to ignore your guide at first because you didn't do the setup the way that I would have done it. But after trying it, I'm absolutely enthralled with it. So welcome, Samer. I'm glad to have you.
Thanks, Fizz. It's great to be here. I appreciate the kind words. I think the reason why you may not have initially agreed with my guide is probably because I'm really quite new to Linux and Ubuntu in general, and I even say it differently to you. And I'm sure my approach has been a little unconventional, but let's see how it shakes out.
Sure. And I'll tell you, the security approach of running things as systemd services, I know is superior. I've always, or until recently, have gone for the ease of just using multiplexing and screen sessions to background my processes. But from a security standpoint, I definitely agree that systemd services under independent users is definitely superior. So great. So our plan tonight is just to walk through these instructions. You can find them at medium.com at Samer East, Guide to Staking on Ethereum 2 Teku. I Google it when I need it. I look for Samer ESAT. ESAT, is that right?
Yes,
How
that's
do you
that.
say it? ESAT. And whenever I want one of your guides, I type in your username and the guide I'm looking for, and it's always at the top. So
That's cool.
Let's see, prerequisites. So I'm on Linux. I have MetaMask. One of the things I did before we started this is I went ahead and installed Geth on the Gurley testnet. We'll redo those instructions tonight just so that people can watch. But everyone should know that when I get to Geth, it's going to look like it's already synced, but it will take a new installation a couple hours to sync up. Let's see. Also, if you're doing this for yourself, you should probably do it with the Ubuntu Server Edition. I'm using the desktop just because I wanted to have the side-by-side with Firefox. But honestly, if you're most comfortable with the desktop, by all means, you're not going to hurt anything. But from a system resources perspective, it's best to use a Server Edition. Okay. Would you like to run over this graphic? I peeked at it and I was impressed with it, but I'd love to hear your description of it.
So what I was hoping to achieve here is just to give a little bit of an overview to the reader with respect to what we were doing at a high level and how the components tie together. When you're looking at this for the first time, or if you don't have a good sort of background or understanding of how these ETH2 phase 0 sort of hangs together and what the clients bring to the table, it can be a little bit hard as you're sort of reading through the guide to figure out what's doing what. So it's a super simplified and basic diagram, but all it's showing is just like, hey, like these yellow components here where we're going to be dealing with those in the guide. There's a validator, there's a beacon node, there's some activity there to activate the validator keys, and there's an ETH1 node that talks to the ETH1, the ETH1 chain that's running with the Gurley testnet. So yeah, that's really my motivation behind it.
Okay. Some of the the points worth noting that new people may not be totally aware of. An Ethereum 2 validator requires Ethereum 1 data. In most cases, that's going to be by running the Geth chain. Using Geth in the background to feed data to the Ethereum 2 node. The Ethereum 2 node needs to know when new transactions are, or when new deposits are made. And the only way it can know about that is by reading data from an Ethereum 1 node. You can also use something like Infura, but that I consider that to be less than best practice. The other thing I wanted to point out, many validators run a separate validator and beacon node, but Teku runs those together. So it just is what it is.
Yeah, and so I actually made a note there just prior to the diagram. The Teku team are actually working on separating those processes, but for now they're running as a single instance. And so in the future at some point, you may find that the guide will actually have them referred to them as separate instances once they make that change.
That's one of the funny things about making these guides is, in like 3 days, it's going to be totally outdated.
Yeah.
So we're going to set up the uncomplicated firewall. I'm going to just copy and paste. So 22 TCP is for SSH access.
Yeah, and there's a recommendation there for production to consider changing that port. Lots of processes and bots and other things scan for that port so they can attack it as a vector. And in a production scenario, you probably want to consider changing that port.
Yeah, I love that you integrated. So a lot of the instructionals that I've done are bare bones. Like, let's just get it up and running. This, I feel, is so much more in depth about a full installation with full security, everything someone would need.
So my ultimate goal with these guides is to actually provide an option for production. And so once mainnet goes live, I really did this for myself originally, and that is like I wanted to start preparing for staking on the Ethereum 2 phase 0 mainnet. And so what I wanted to do was basically author myself a set of instructions that I could follow to make sure that I did that, effectively and correctly. And so my goal is to sort of, evolve this guide to the point where once we're in production, we have, or at least I have, and anyone who cares to follow it, a series of instructions that can sort of specify a production loadout. And so that should be comprehensive. So you should consider security. You should consider, what do I need to do if I need to update the binaries, if the code changes, for example. What happens if I have to restart cycle the machine? Will it come back up? How do I monitor the performance of my my validators and so on? And so that I really wanted to be as complete and comprehensive as possible.
I think you really hit that nail on the head. Yes,
well, it's getting there.
Well,
I think there's more we can do.
By mainnet, these will be, you've got the full stack. You've got set up from the beginning to end. So, I was curious about this, and this is not a direction that I followed. Where you create a new user, I generally use user 1000 with sudo permission. Do you create an additional user from this point?
Yes. So what my motivation there was just to say, once I have the firewall in place and I do that as the root user, I want to move away from logging in as the root user. I'm not an expert at this, and it's easy to make mistakes, and the root user is so privileged by default. And so from my research, it just seemed to be that the better practice to create a user level account that has those admin privileges, but you're forced to use the sudo command to actually elevate. And so therefore, you have to sort of think about what you're doing, and so less chance to make a mistake, I guess. Yeah, okay. That's what my thinking was.
I'll go ahead and do that. So my understanding is that we're creating a user with a similar privilege. yeah, we may just have a minor misunderstanding or difference in understanding about how
Mm.
those user accounts
I
work.
think
But
I think the difference is that root has that by you know that level of permission by default. Whereas the user that we're creating, although they have admin privileges, you know, you need to explicitly request that admin privilege. Um, uh, Maybe the difference is minor or inconsequential, but from my perspective, it was just sort of I did some research and that's what it told me to do. So
okay,
I thought it wasn't unreasonable. You know, so
so yeah, I think what we're looking at is basically the Debian security model as it's applied to Linux, but doesn't matter. This will work perfectly. I'm happy to go with it. So let's see. I've got the username. Do I need to? You're
So
just
this
give
step
keys
here
for
is
that.
only required if you're actually using SSH keys to connect to the
Okay.
instance. What it will do is, because you start out with an instance with a root user, and if you establish an SSH key um, uh, connection to it, you know, there's a you know, that step will basically copy those keys across to the new user, and so you can log in with exactly the same key for that particular user as well.
I th
More of a convenience than anything else.
I think what I figured out is yeah. So we're not logged in. I'm not logged in currently as root. Logging into Ubuntu as root is disabled by default. But when you go to many services, they begin you as root. So if you're logged in as root, you must create a new user. If you begin as a different user, for example, I'm already superfizz here, then I'm not logged in as root, and I wouldn't have to create a different user.
That makes sense.
But yeah, okay. It
Yeah.
just took me a while to figure it all out. So I'm not the root user, and we can do. Hopefully, I already have updates ready. Great. And I love that you've included auto remove. I have a tendency to keep those unused applications sitting around. So I already have this repository added. I'm not going to re-add it. Update and install Ethereum. I already have Geth installed, and Geth is a part of the Ethereum package. And I've already created this user. I've already made that directory. And so let's just verify.
And I will say, like, for folks that are planning to run additional storage or something like that, they may want to consider, you know, targeting the data directory on that mounted storage, for example. But you have the ability to choose whatever path you want there.
Yeah. So in data directory down here. And it would also make sense to add that to the fstab so that it mounts on boot and it mounts consistently in the same place. I noticed when I copied this, and let me do it as a, when I copied these, I needed to do a little bit of formatting.
Yeah, I came across the same issue there. I'm not sure if that's more related to the Medium service itself or the site. But yeah, I came across a similar issue. And so that's why I included, for a lot of these, I included screenshots just to help people, you know, sort of make sure that their version was similar.
Yep, and I loved your screenshots. So now that we have the Geth system created, we need to reload the daemon control, and we can start Geth. And what I want to do is just check that Geth is running. And it is, and it's up to date. It's importing. Yep. So I can drop out of that. So now we get to the fun stuff. So far what we have an Ubuntu installation, 20.04. We've secured the firewall. We've added all the ports that we need to access. We've created a secure user. And then we've gone on and created another user to run Geth and a system process for that. System control enable geth adds geth to the systemd. So when you reboot, it will launch automatically. And journal control lets you look at the end of the journal to make sure that everything is coming out like it's supposed to.
Yeah, there we see,
should see a
the
block
imported
Yay!
chain segments. Yep.
Okay, and I can Control C to quit that. And let's see.
So this next part here talks about just optionally adding additional peers into the configuration. I came across scenarios where it would just take a really long time, or even not at all, to find peers when it was trying to sync. And so I found that there are some additional boot modes that you can add to the configuration to help give it a little bit of a kick. And so that's the optional section there.
Great. I love.
So we don't need to do that.
Yep. Skip that. Oh, not
Some
your
like
verbal
it.
verbosity, but your product verbosity. Like it's every contingency is addressed. Okay, so we're set for geth.
Okay, and there's the instructions there if you wanted to verify that you're sort of synced, or at least what the distance is between the chain head and what you're syncing against. The number there is in the output just shows where it's at, and then you can go look it up to see what the latest block is. Yeah, that's the block number, and then you can compare that to the latest block to confirm that it's synced. But we are obviously synced to it, so we're okay.
Sure. Okay, great. Okay. So we're going ahead to do validator deposit data. I have to confess, I didn't look at this in advance because I didn't want to. I didn't want to predict what was next, because I would have guessed that we would install the validator client next, but we're going to do deposit data first.
So in this case, the validator client requires the deposit data to be in place when we start it. So I played with this a little bit in terms of the order of operations, but I figured it might be better to get all this stuff in place, and then once we start the validator client, we can have a clean start.
Perfect. So Girly ETH, you can get Girly ETH from Discord, either through the ETH Staker Discord or any of the client Discords. Most of them run bots. I know for certain that at this time, ETH Staker and Prism are running a bot. Developers are asking that you do not ask individuals for Girly ETH because it needs to be, the flow of Girly needs to be tracked in case there's a problem. Great, and you've got a list of, beautiful. So you've told people how to get Girly ETH, and I already have some Girly ETH in my MetaMask. One of the things, and I see your drop down up here.
Yeah.
A lot of times, if I'm flipping back and forth, I will forget which network I'm on, and I will inadvertently be on mainnet trying to wait. I'm like, well, how come it's not happening? It's not happening. But that drop down is a very important place to check to make sure you're on the right network. So we're going to simulate a deposit here as we go on. Let's see.
Yeah, so first things first, what we're going to do is we'll get our ETH into our wallet, and then once we know how much ETH we have, then we can determine that may sort of determine how many validators we can have. We'll need 32 ETH per validator, and that's Girly ETH. So we're not using mainnet ETH. This is Girly ETH, we need 32 per validator plus a little bit extra for gas. So that's really important. And once we know how much we have, then we can go ahead and start doing the cloning the deposit generator client and so on. And so this is sort of part of the process of the launchpad. One of the options there, rather than using the launchpad on a computer to generate that stuff, is to pull the code directly from the repo, and that's what I'm doing here.
Okay, and so there's now an executable for this. You no longer need to install Python. The Python.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah, that's correct. Yeah, so you can actually download the binary and just execute the binary. I figured I'd
But
just,
you're
because I've
being
been doing repo pools, I just figured I'd just continue in that theme as well.
okay. We can do that. Let's do it that way.
Oh, you may have. Yeah, okay, we're good.
So I installed Git. I also pulled curl because they go together.
I should add that instruction there. I assumed it, I assumed it would.
It comes in the desktop install. I'm sorry, in the server install, but not in the desktop
And
install.
on the desktop.
And
Okay.
your instructions do recommend the server install, but a couple of those networking tools.
So it looks like you've got Python there, which is good. So we don't have to do those steps.
Yeah, it's greater than Python 3.7. So
And then we need pip.
Oh, good. I was like, oh no. Installing a number of validators in 5. I'm only going to do one right now.
Yeah, you can.
I need to
do
make
one.
sure
That's
it doesn't overwrite my other the directory keys that I imported earlier. It will not, because it's going to go to a subdirectory called E2O deposit validator keys.
Right.
I was thinking I could create more, but let's not do that.
Oh, did you run the install line? You ran the install, didn't you? The one you've got highlighted right now.
Let's see. I thought I did. Nope, I skipped over it.
Yeah, copy and paste is hard. I'm not even joking.
I took that as a
so
slight.
It's not at all. Like, I'm serious. It's the simplest thing in the world, but it's
Sure.
the hardest thing in the world. Especially if all you're doing is copy pasting line after line.
And well, it's been probably a week or two since I've built, because I've just been using the binary.
Right.
All right, let's try that again. Deposit SH, number of validators 1, chain Medalla. Hey, it works if we build it.
Okay, and we get our memnomic, which we'll have to send back to it. Yeah, it helps to have a notepad or something similar handy when you're doing this stuff. Text editor of your choice.
One of the interesting things, it took me a few years of using bash terminals in the screen, is when you do copy and paste in the terminal, you use Control-Shift-C and Control-Shift-V. Just took me a while to figure that out. Someone watching may not, also the right click works fine, but
yeah, I like the right click.
Okay, so these are the keys we just generated. And let's see. In the validator keys directory, deposit data timestamp. Copy the next. So you're going to FTP it locally. So
we don't need to do that because
server. That's right.
Yeah.
And so
So it's worth saying that in that directory we get the deposit data JSON file, and then we get the keystore-m JSON file. The deposit data, if you look inside that, it has a list of all the public keys for the keys. And what we want to do is when we get that, we send that up using the upload deposit file that we're looking at on the screen right now. That's part of the Launchpad site, and we're going to send that to that site. And so what happens is, that site can read the keys inside that file and use that to build the validator deposits that we're going to send with some Goerli ETH. So yeah, we can skip past all that because we've done it all, and so this is the part now where we're going to attach the deposit data file that we generated. So there it is right there. It'll give us a nice tick. And then it will tell us that we need associate some ETH with the validator account, basically, for our staking. And so that's what we're doing right now. We're effectively funding the validator account, and that's going to be our stake. So we trigger initiate. It's going to open MetaMask, and it's going to tell us what we need to pay there, and it will start the transaction. And in a few moments, that will appear on the Goerli test network. You can see there the transaction's pending. And so what we've done is we've basically, you can see there's the beacon contract, the deposit contract for the testnet there. And so that's our target, our destination for those funds. And once that happens, that validator account then goes into a queue. And hey Fizz, you know how many per minute or whatever
it begins as four per proposed block. So that's four every 6 minutes.
Every 6 minutes, right?
Every 6.4 minutes, but yeah. And actually, as the network grows, that number also grows, but at least in the beginning, it's 4 per block.
Interesting. I was not aware of that. And okay. Congratulations.
So
we're done.
Back to the validator queue. This validator will now be in a queue waiting for inclusion. And what we've done is kind of skip around that, and we have keys that have been on the network longer and are ready to begin validating now. So what I'd like to do
Fizz,
really fast.
Yeah, while you're doing that, once you get a chance, make a copy. You can make a copy of the new public key that we have, and we can look that up and see where it is in the queue as well.
Okay. Validator keys to I should not have killed that directory. I'm trying to do a one for one drop in.
So we have a key that we prepared that's actually live that we can use for this demo, and that's what Fizz is doing right now. He's just copying it over to the right place so we can continue with the guide.
Great. And while we have this, we can check. Now, Beacon Chain has a really neat feature that lets you...
So for that one, I think you're copying your wallet address, so we might have to... the validator public key, there it is. Okay, yes. Well, I think it's there.
There's a trick, and that's... So if you copy this address and take it to Beacon Chain, you don't actually have to find...
Oh, the validator key?
You don't have to find the validator keys. You can enter your
that's awesome.
address, and it will search for those.
I had no idea.
And so associated with this ETH1, yeah, so if we had done 10 of them, we could pull up all of the validators at once.
That is so handy. I was not aware of that. That's fantastic. I'm going to have to update the guide.
Yeah, so all you need is your ETH1 address into Beacon Chain, and you can pull all of your validator keys in one easy stroke. And so you can see I made a deposit a day ago. this is the one I just did 3 minutes ago. It won't actually even be in the queue yet. It'll still be processing, but we can peek at
Oh,
it.
interesting.
Yeah. So
Yeah, it's pending. Yeah.
in about an hour or two, it will get a place in the queue, and then we'll know how long. 8 hours. We'll know where it will fall in the queue. But so we've got the deposit in on Launchpad. We have a beacon chain validator key store, and we're ready to go on with the guide.
Let's do it.
I love the quality of this. It makes my day.
It took some
Okay.
time.
Yeah, I'm sure that it did. That's why mine only have the 3 commands to launch the validator, and I'm out.
I know, and I've been putting thought towards creating a scripted version of this, but I don't know, I haven't gotten there yet.
I was thinking that while I was running today. I was like, man, he wrote that so well that I could rip it and script it in like 5 minutes. It really wouldn't take 5 minutes, but yeah. Yeah. So, and this would actually be great to update with just dropping in that ETH1 key.
Yep. Yeah. I think I'll do that. That's a great call out. Thank you, Fizz.
Okay. So.
So now we're gonna.
Peter and Buddha. I'm sorry. Yeah. They're the Bitfly folks that developed that. So. Sorry, Beacon Chain.
That's right.
I may not know everyone who put work into that, but I do know they did a great job. Buddha is my friend who I talked to about the progress of that. So I know they do a great job.
I always thought his name was Butter. Butter.
Well, so yeah, so I checked on this because we talk every day. We text every day. It depends what country you're from, but so the German pronunciation, he tells me, is Buddha, and I prefer that to calling him Buddha. So
yes, I can see why. So what we're doing right now is we're just installing the dependencies for Teku, the client. And so Teku is built in Java, and so it requires the JRE, the Java runtime, to run, and the JDK to compile. So if we were just running the binary, we wouldn't need the JDK, but we're building it from source, so we're going to need that extra bits and pieces there to help it along. And yeah, there's the note there that the Pegasus team are working on separating the binary into separate binaries, one for beacon node and one for validator, which is a similar model to Prism. So we'll pull the source down from the repo, and we'll issue a command to tell the code to build. So it takes a little while, a couple of minutes, maybe 3 minutes or something like that, if I recall correctly. Unless you've done it before, the subsequent builds are much faster, obviously. Yes, yeah. And yeah, if you run into problems, there's a great Discord there on Consensus, which has a Teku channel, and there are lots of people there who are part of the core team and other folks that really know what they're doing, and so you can get help there. Or of course, there's the ETH Staker Discord as well, which isn't linked there, but is also an excellent place to get help.
And we're all on the same team, so Teku is a fantastic team, good folks, and everyone's intent is to get people help and get them up to speed, so that they can then go out and distribute more help, because learning the staking process, the Ethereum 2 process, is such an undertaking that it really takes a lot of people who learn a little bit and then share it out. So if you go to any of those Discords, you'll find people who are eager to help you answer questions.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, I've gotten a lot of help for these guides from various from those Discords, and I couldn't have done it without them. Honestly, it's challenging sometimes. They're just little quirks or just different ways you want to do things that don't align with the official documentation, and so that's where it's really useful to get that kind of help. Of course, you could just go look at the code, but there's a bit of code there.
Mhm. Yeah,
These teams have been working so hard on this stuff. It's amazing.
let's not live in the illusion that we could all quickly peek in and figure out what's wrong. Like,
It's yeah,
I feel like the install methods that you're presenting are really best practice. And that's a lot for me to say because as I mentioned before, I have my own way of doing things, but would really regard your setup, your installation as best practice rather than pulling binaries you're building from source.
Hmm.
You're
it
building
it's an
security
interesting
minded.
it's an interesting consideration because ultimately, when it comes down to it, if we're casting our mind ahead to mainnet, and if you're running a validator and beacon chain in for mainnet, okay, so I'm just going to pause what I'm saying here. So what we did there is we copied the contents of the build output to a directory in user local. And so the reason I do that is because I want to run the service from user local, which is considered a good practice, rather than under the current logged in account.
And the way that I always handle those things is I create an update script that's just what you have there. And
Right.
when I come back later, I'll just run the update and that will be done. Great.
Very cool. Yeah, so what I was saying there is that when you're in production, you have to consider scenarios where if the client team, updates the software, what's the best approach there to update your client? And arguably pulling from the repo may not be the best. So I'm not really sure about that. I'd love to hear arguments one way or the other. I'd feel comfortable doing that, but maybe the better option is to pull a specific binary with a specific version.
I think a lot of
I'm
that,
not really sure.
I'd say a lot of that has to do with the stage of development.
Yeah.
Because right now in testnet, we want bleeding edge that runs. So I think it's great to build from source. When we go to
Yeah.
mainnet, most projects will use that staging area to test things before they deploy code to the main branch, right? I mean,
Right.
that seems to be my
Yeah.
experience.
Yeah. So we're just granting some permissions here. What we did is we created we created a user that can't log in for the service to run under, for the system service to run under. And then we created our data directory. So our data directory is where the Teku database will be for the beacon node. And then there's a etc Teku as well, which is where we're going to store the configuration data for the client as well. That's a YAML file that's going to go there. And maybe we'll throw the keys there as well. And then we'll give that Teku account that we created that the service is going to use to run permission to make changes against those directories.
I'm glad that I swapped out those validator keys before we got this far because I got into the copy paste, and so
Right.
we should have moved the updated validator key into variable data libteku. So that should be great to go.
And so this is sort of the clunkier part of what we're doing here, and this applies not just to Teku but other clients as well. We need to create a password file in with in unencrypted text, and we have to use that as the password to access the key. So hopefully, Fizz, that's the password that is for your key.
Actually, no. I'm sorry. I was using your example without thinking ahead. I'm going to need to blur out this super secret. Thank you for pointing that out.
Yeah, no problem. One thing I recommend for folks that are going through this for the first time is just be careful to read the instructions clearly, carefully. Otherwise, you might accidentally make a mistake, and you'll sort of be scratching your head trying to figure out how you got to where you are. and some of them could be quite subtle. It could be quite difficult to figure out what went wrong. So yeah, definitely for that first pass, just make sure you read through it carefully for each step.
And that's what you're pointing out and what I missed. It's the difference between setting and retrieving a password. I quickly assumed we were setting a password with this, and I used your example because I assumed we'd be using it later. Actually,
Right.
we're retrieving a password, which is the password we already set to protect the validator key.
That's correct.
So that can be a little.
Yeah, and I explained that above, I think. So hopefully as folks read through that.
I have something I'd like to pop in here real quick. I'm going to go off screen and find it. I have a, a YAML markup, like a linter for YAML.
Okay.
That works with Nano that I'd like to throw in there. And so let me say what this is really quickly. A linter is something that highlights text that shows you when your syntax is correct and incorrect. And YAML can be a little difficult to read. And so I use a YAML linter basically just to highlight text so it shows me when I've made a mistake.
Oh, that's cool.
And you can find that, I'm getting it from ourcodeworld.com, how to enable syntax highlighting for YAML files in GNU Nano. Whoa, let me back up. I'm getting ahead of myself.
Yeah, we should open the file.
Okay, and so because I went a little off script here, let me tell you what I'm doing. We created a file with the password for the validators that is the same password we set when we created those keys. And now we're going to create the the Teku configuration file, which is written in a configuration language called YAML, which stands for yet another markup language. But because the syntax for YAML can be a little picky, I added something called a YAML Linter, which is a tool that highlights the syntax. And so now I can create this YAML file, and possibly when I paste this in, it will have pretty coloring to let me know how it's doing. Okay, so that's essentially.
Yeah, but it kind of messes it up.
Clean that up. Yep.
What I found was that I did this on Windows, and it would do exactly the same thing when I'd copy paste it over into the terminal. So what I figured out was that if you take that, if you copy it out of the guide and paste it into a text editor like Notepad, and then you copy it out of Notepad and then you paste it into the terminal, it would format it correctly. Not sure if it'll work here, but I guess we could always give it a try. So you see, like that formatted.
It did not.
No, it didn't, did it?
No.
Well, maybe Notepad on Windows is superior.
Yeah, maybe. It's fighting. And I know it has to do with the line breaks, whether they're
right.
New line or return lines, but I guess you can't really control that here. New line or carriage return, is that what I'm saying? When I used to do a lot of data importing, I felt like a guru at reading line endings.
Yeah, the color coding is makes it a lot easier. That's really cool.
I will not touch YAML without it anymore. I'm such a baby. So
you need to move down REST API and log destination as well.
Okay, great. Yes, I see now. Thank you. I knew I was doing something wrong. I couldn't figure out what it was.
Okay.
Yes,
console metrics as well.
Great.
Sorry, metrics. Yep.
Oops.
So log destination console just means that it's going to output any logging to the console, which is appropriate for what we're doing, because the journal can then you can manipulate the journal to format it. And then of course we need to set our Pope string.
And so to get that, we're going to go to beacon chain, and let me think for a moment how I'm going to do this. Let me open up a new window. Let me go to find that validator key. Oh, I moved those.
Validator key or wallet address?
I need the wallet address. That's right. Sorry.
Yeah.
Oh, it's an ETH1 wallet address. Sorry. Yeah, I'm on stage and
Yeah.
I forget what I'm doing. So yeah, let me just grab one here. And we go. So yeah, so let me clarify, because I got confused. I was on stage and got my head mixed up. The POAP string is created from an ETH1 wallet address. It has nothing to do with your validator key store. In this case, I'm using the ETH1 address that I created this transaction with, and then I go to beacon chain / POAP, and here I can enter that ETH1 address here, and I'm looking for Teku. I can copy that string and then paste it here. And now when I propose a block, this graffiti will show up. And when POAPs are distributed, I will be eligible to receive one if I propose a block with this validator. Now, so let's be clear, you can run a validator forever and ever, but if you don't propose a block, then you won't receive a POAP. And let me clean this up too. I just realized this.
That's correct.
And so I love that you can use the same password file. That made me happy. And I'll also need to go get. I'm sorry, were you saying something?
I was just going to say that an interesting quirk of Teku at the moment, and they're working on a newer version to this, is that each validator key that you have has to have a corresponding password file. And if it's the same password for all keys, you just duplicate the file, but it needs to correspond to the key files. That's why I was repeating it there.
Got it. Yeah. And so I had done my configuration not using YAML, but using just a bash script, and it got really ugly. So I like that you're using the YAML file. This is so much easier to maintain. Once you get it right, it's easier to maintain.
Once you get it right, that's the key there. Yeah.
Well, and that the YAML linter goes a long way for that.
Yeah.
This looks good.
It's much. Yeah. Let me see. Yeah, we're going localhost for the ETH1 endpoint. That's our data path. Yep. I mean, I assume you got the key store file name.
Yeah, I just checked it.
Yeah, I think it looks pretty good.
Okay, great. Slide that back over.
Yeah, it's a lot. I was just saying, it's a lot cleaner than using a bunch of flags. You know, on the exec start, having the YAML file for your config.
Okay, so this is done. That's done. The validator key password files are so. Okay, and so we've done the graffiti. And so I'm like reading your string. The last digit is the client identifier, and so F was one that we were like, that'll be the one that goes to whoever's gaming the system, because they're gonna go all the way EFGH.
Yeah, that's right.
So,
well, that's reserved for the secret client that is, you know. Yeah, I mean, in theory, anyone can develop a client. The ETH spec is open, and the ETH2 specification is open, and you can feel free to go and code up a client against it.
I don't know the current status, but Trinity is developing, and they may have a launchable client soon. I say that.
That's exciting.
Not knowing the whole story, but create a system D. Okay.
So now what we're doing here is we're going to create the configuration for the service that runs the Teku binary. So the Teku binary has a YAML file for configuration, and this is the configuration for the service that's going to run the Teku binary, which will use the YAML file, if that makes sense. And you can see the exec start is really super clean. What we're specifying is the configuration file, which is the YAML file that we created before. And we're going to run Teku from the location that we copied the binary, the build output data to. So we're not running under the logged in user account.
My exec starts are generally 40 lines long, so
Yeah,
this is beautiful.
yeah. I mean, kudos to the client, to the Teku team that use that as an approach.
I'm like, when I need to add something on, I'll just tack it into the exec start. All right. So I'm sloppy about everything. I just get it done. That's why I'm so enamored with this. So we have that done. We need to reload the daemon.
That's right.
And
if we played our cards right,
I feel
we
good
should be
about
good
it.
here.
I feel good about it.
You feel good?
I do. Well, you've been so thorough. Well, except I've sped through it.
That's right.
If I were,
Will it be a Bill? Is it going to be a Bill Gates moment? We'll find out.
Hey, look at that! There we go.
It's running. It's listening.
Let's see. Let's check the
Fantastic.
journal. Oh, that's Geth. We don't want Geth.
That's for Geth, yeah. Oh, and actually, that's a good.
It.
We should call that out. I mean, it's just down below, but yeah, definitely pay attention to that. It is important that you wait for that Geth node to fully sync before you run the Teku service. It will deal with it, but it's considered better practice.
Definitely one of the things I've discovered with all of the clients is they want Geth to be fully synced. And
yeah.
Even though we've spent whatever, I don't know how long it's been, but a few minutes going through this, I synced Geth before synced. I chose to sync Geth before we even began this. It just had happened in the background. So don't be surprised if yours is not ready. So let's check it out. Oh, I'm very happy with how this is unfolding. Like because we did the key swap, we're gonna get to look and see if we're proposing, or well, if we're sorry, what's the word I'm looking for? If we're attesting is what I wanted to say.
Right.
So we have good peers.
We may not get there. We have good peers. We may not get there during this video though, because it does take a little while for
68,000
for it to
That's right.
for it to catch up to the chain head on the ETH1 go early testnet, the testnet, the chain.
That's right.
The blockchain.
It will be several hours. I won't commit to this, but I may try some voodoo magic to
to splice it in later.
Yeah. I'm
sure.
not a video editor. I'm a straight.
It's okay. I mean,
guy.
we'll still be able to if we're going to continue, we'll still be able to see some dashboard information as well, which would be cool.
Sure.
So this step here, I just provided this for folks that wanted to sort of do a real fast sort of update here, where you can sort of like pull latest into the code. You build it, you stop the service, you move the binary across, and then you update it. So you don't need to run that right now, but you can if you like, or if you want to script it.
I would tell anyone, the way to handle this, especially in a production server, because you don't want to be entering free-form commands, is to just script it. And the script is here. All you'd have to do is really just copy that. And some people feel intimidated by what a bash script is, but this is it. This is all you would need to do. And after you do this, you need to make that executable. And because it has commands in it that are super user, you'll need to either run it with a super user command or enter the password interactively. I'm not going to run it now because it's, wait, does it? Oh, look at you. Samir, I like it. You've set this up so that you can run it live. You don't have to stop it and restart it manually. This is going to do, you can basically run this in production to catch an update without missing anything. So great. This is fantastic.
Hopefully.
Yeah. Well, and that is anyone who's really
So, I
taking
mean,
this
once you get,
seriously is going to do this on a test box to make sure that everything goes well before they come to their live staking machine. And the test box obviously wouldn't have any validator keys on it, but just to make sure that everything is going to compile and load correctly.
yeah, I mean, the interesting thing is that this Medalla testnet is basically one of our best opportunities to really exercise this and get it down. The challenge is obviously the client teams are still pushing hard on bug fixes and other things, so we haven't sort of stabilized down to that yet. However, as they narrow down and sort of get closer to a production iteration, that's when you can really sort of go through, set everything up one last time before they shut it off and go to mainnet, and just really make sure that you can cycle the server and it's going to come back up again, and that you can update the binary or the pull and build if you want to do it that way, and just make sure that everything is functional. All of those scenarios that the worst case scenarios that you can think of are you can sort of have some kind of strategy around it.
And that's
Yeah.
one of the things that you can do on a live server to prevent killing your good binary instead of removing it, is just to move it to a dated version. So it's still
Yeah.
there, and you can go back and list and find all of the old dated versions. At some point that could become overwhelming, but it does protect you from deleting what could be the working binary that you needed later.
That's a good call out. That's really clever.
So do we want to do Prometheus, or do we want to look at the status of our keys?
It's up to you. If you want, we can. If you want to do a quick copy paste, it's super. You can just sort of breeze through it if you like.
Yeah.
And we don't have to talk too much. You can just literally copy paste every command going forward from here. Okay. And folks, when you're going through the guide, just read through it just so you can see what you're doing. But I've done this so many times now for all of my guides that as long as you're accurate with your copy pasting, we should be good, at least for the purposes of this demo.
And that's I like what you say. Doing this is not a substitute for understanding what you're doing. If you don't understand what you're doing, so it's a guide intended to help you learn it. But if you're blindly copy pasting, then you can't really maintain the system, and it could lead to trouble down the road.
Yeah, especially if things go wrong. Yeah, so Prometheus is a piece of software that allows us to expose metrics. It's an aggregator, I think, that can gather and emit metrics based on the services that subscribe to it or that implement some interface that works with it. And we use that as our data source for Grafana, which is a dashboarding tool that that I used in this guide. And so what Prometheus does is it allows us to expose data about our beacon and validator, and we can visualize those, and our server or desktop machine as well. And we'll expose those so we can monitor things. And monitoring is a big deal because you really don't want to be, spending too much effort to figure out whether or not things are running correctly. It's super important, obviously, that your validators are up and running. And yeah, look at that. That pasted pretty good, didn't it? And so, it's important to set up a good monitoring solution, and ideally you have alerting associated with that as well. And that's something that I'm looking into a little bit more to see if I can include in the guide, because I don't really include that at the moment. But
do you use a notifier right now?
No, I don't use a notifier.
I use Pushover for Android. Yeah, they also have it for iPhone. I love
Oh, they do.
pushover. Yeah, I have basically any system that I need to monitor at my house, even my trading bot, is all push through pushover. Very
Hmm.
configurable, very easy to use, and I love it.
Okay, yeah, I'll take a look. I'll take a look at that. So yeah, this is running correctly, so it's ready to receive web requests. So that's the output that we're expecting. So you can Control C out of that, and then just continue to create the service file now, the systemd file, configuration file.
Yes, there's my kind of exec start. Thank you. I'm missing a stance
Yeah,
variable. So if you're new to systemd, all services are going to have these three stanzas, so you should look for them whenever you modify system service. I said that and I'm like, I think that's right.
and once we get this set up, I can tell you there's nothing more satisfying than getting that dashboard up and visualizing what's going on, and then playing with that dashboard too. And I really encourage anyone who's following this guide who sets up a Prometheus and Grafana monitoring solution to spend some time to learn how the dashboard works, and then customize it. Like you can play around with it and create your own look and feel to it. I'm excited to see some of the cool things that people come up with for production. And these are shareable, so you can sort of make something and then make it available to the community, which I think is really cool and important.
And the good news is you can't break anything by playing with Grafana. Like,
That's right.
you can look at data all day long, you can customize, but you're not going to break your validator by playing with it. So it's a freebie.
That's right. Yep. And so we'll start that as a service.
I'm still running my
Sorry, well,
Altona validators, and
oh
I'm
wow.
obsessing over my Grafana dashboard because I'm watching everyone leak tons and tons of ether. It's great.
I created this brilliant dashboard when I was setting up my Prism guide, and um, I I didn't back it up, and I deleted the instance, and
Oh no.
I was really unhappy about that. So make sure you
Yeah.
back up your
That is I'd mentioned that I'm
your
sloppy.
dashboards.
So yeah, I create, 5 virtual machines a day, and every once in a while I'll get something I really love, and then I whoops, wipe it.
Yep.
That looks
Yeah, it
great.
can get hard to keep track of things as well sometimes. So yeah, be deliberate about what you're doing for sure. It's good to get into that habit, especially once you're dealing with a production environment. There's not a lot of room for error, so you got to be really careful and practiced about what you're doing. I'm not trying to scare you here. I think yeah, that's optional. You don't need to do that because we didn't expose that port unless you did.
Okay. Uh, I
You may
did
have done.
not.
That one there
Nope.
is just so you
It's
can
just a
test
test. Yeah,
Prometheus.
that's right.
Yeah, yeah. And so now
I'm getting good at
we're
copy
almost there.
paste.
Yeah.
Well,
Yeah.
this is why, this is a great illustration of why things are worth scripting, or at least taking notes. You don't want to have to remember how to do this from scratch every single time.
That's right. Yeah. Yeah. So I think as we get closer to mainnet, I'm going to look at an opportunity to provide a scripted version of this for folks that are comfortable with it. And I've done it a few times. You can just sort of run a discrete set of scripts that should cover most scenarios. Yeah, you don't need to. That's just to sort of verify that you got.
Yeah. You've essentially already scripted it. I mean, just
Yeah,
commenting out
it's
all the and do some text piping for the systemd. services.
Right. Yeah, and if we do another version of these at some point, you know, we can perhaps prepare have those scripts available so we don't have to
Well,
make people watch us.
during testing, it should be an exercise in doing it manually.
Right. And absolutely don't forget to do this step. And so this is important. You really want to, once you're done with this guide, I really recommend you do try out a restart to make sure that all the services that you configured have come up. I've done this a few times, and sometimes if I forget to paste that line and execute it, we end up with a situation where a service doesn't restart, and then we're in trouble. So yeah, definitely want to make sure you're validating that all your services are starting on reboot.
Speaking of which, I found that it's helpful to identify all of my Ethereum 2 services, not just with their name, but with a -ETH2, so that when I list all the services, I can grep for ETH2 and instantly they're there rather than having to sort through the.
Yeah, it's a great suggestion. I might actually add that to the guide and provide instructions on how to actually visualize that. I think that's awesome. Yeah, I mean, you can also set up secure logins for this stuff. You can do it over SSL and so on if you're worried about the data that you're getting back.
It's been a while since I've done this.
Okay, so click on the gear on the left there, the gear icon. Yep, and then data sources, and then we want to select we want to add and then choose Prometheus. And if you want to go back to the guide, I think it's localhost 9090, but I can't remember off the top of my head. Oh, it's a little higher up, I think. No, there it is. Yep. Yep. Yeah, it is localhost 9090.
I'm still at the copy paste phase for Prometheus, and like I can't deploy on my own yet.
I notice when I'm sitting in the dark.
Okay, so.
And then yeah, you just want to hit.
I'm going to split into 2 tabs. Okay.
There you go. So yeah, you just want to hit save and test basically on that one. That one's pretty straightforward. And you get a green, so that's awesome. And then you want to go to the plus there and then do an import. And then import, yeah. And so we have a code that we can import. You can also import JSON, and so that's an option. But we have this code that Adrian Sutton, he created this dashboard for Teku. He's one of the core devs, and his code is 12523. And there's a link there. If you travel to the link, you can see the details there on the Grafana site.
I've never used that feature. I've always. That's great.
Yeah, it's so convenient. Yeah. And so by default, it doesn't select your data source. So you want to on this page here, you can name your dashboard, or the default's fine, and you want to just select the data source down the bottom there before you hit import.
Oh, great! Thank you.
Yeah. And then you just hit import there, and we have our dashboard.
Wow!
And it's just literally like that, out of the box, ready to go. And we have a peer count there, and we have one local validator, which is what we set up. Our beacon chain is currently syncing, so the head slot is 12,961, and there's some other metrics there. And so the opportunity here is for you to go jump into this and play around and see what you can add or change or whatever. But and if you scroll right up to the top there, you can actually see there's some data there. You'll see like whether or not we've done any attestations, or how many blocks have been published and so on and so forth. So
this is the poet column.
I think that might be.
That's the poet column. That's all we care about.
That's right. So actually, I don't know. Is that that top row? That might actually. Is that for the validator, or is that for the? I'm guessing that's the validator.
Published blocks here would be.
What we've published, right?
Yes.
Yeah. Oh, okay, yeah, and then we have the beacon chain there, and we see like there's a current epoch and current finalized slide. I don't. Do we have data on the actual testnet itself?
Well,
Don't
so
recall.
as in live
I don't.
validators, this
Oh,
is
right. Yeah. Okay. Yep. There you go. Yeah, there's a participation rate of 76%. I'm
which
guessing
is
that's what that is.
great. Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm glad that's improving.
Yeah, I think. Yeah, and then this other stuff is useful as well. This is really important because it's talking about like memory, CPU, GC times, which is important for Java-related garbage collection. And then you have peers and other things like that. So, you should configure this in the way that you feel makes sense. And because we're using metrics, you can add more to that. You can add disk space and other things like that, and you can alert on all that stuff and give you a bit of peace of mind there, so you don't have to continually be looking at things to make sure that the validator is doing its job.
I want to make a plug for pushover just because I'm so in love with it. This is what I use for my notifications through Grafana. And so it's so configurable that I put my phone on do not disturb at night, but pushover can push through do not disturb and wake me up, which is really what I want. So very
That's
happy with it.
awesome. Yeah, I think that's going to be critical, especially for peace of mind. Some solution like that is really important once we get into production.
I love it.
We're
Samir,
done.
it has been a true privilege. Like this is currently my favorite validator install of all of the stuff I've put together.
I
Just
appreciate
because
that. Thank you, Fitz.
it's so just so thorough. I'm happy to have it, and I'm really glad we spent time going through it. I hope other people have a chance to learn the big picture. And I know a lot of people have wanted this. They've wanted, how do I start from zero and get to a secured, stable running validator? And I think this is the kind of guide they need.
I hope so. Yeah, feedback is always welcome. My details are there. You can hit me up on the various socials, and yeah, I appreciate the opportunity. Thank you, Fizz. It's been great.
Okay, Samir. All right, take care.
Yeah, you too.